the Trump administration. He opposed Syrian refugees, but took military action quickly, the opposite of President Obama. And that's something that people on Capitol Hill are noticing. Before we get your reaction, I want to read to you a tweet. It's from a congressman in Massachusetts. His name is Seth Moulton, and he pointed out something that I think a lot of people are talking about, and that is questioning President Trump's Syrian strategy. He says this right here. So, President of the United States cares enough about the Syrian people to launch 50 Tomahawks, but not enough to let the victims of Assad find refuge and freedom here. Is there a contradiction?
Well, to some extent there is. But the question of that, the genocide that's going on in Syria is so complicated that it defies anybody to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution. The easiest thing would be, okay, we'll take in some refugees. How many? Where do they come from? What's the vetting process? So Moulton brings up a very good point. It's everything's in how you make it work.
Brian, I recognize the president has only been in office for a couple of months now, but 400,000, an estimated 400,000 people have been killed in the civil war in Syria. And when you really think about it, what difference does it make how they were killed? Why are we just now striking back?
Well, I think because President Trump takes a different view of that situation in Syria than the last administration did, plain and simple. Not better or worse, just a different view of it. When he saw that attack utilizing WMDs, he, I think, was moved and said, hey, that has to be brought to a close. And that was the reason, by the way, for a very targeted, specific attack. No question about it. That could have been widened to other bases, but it's the base from which the plane took off that had that weapon on it that delivered the nerve gas. So this is the message I think the president was trying to send.
A lot of discussion now about Russia and its potential involvement in that chemical attack. No one wants a war with Russia. How big of a concern is that?
I don't think this leads to a war with Russia. I think what it does is it says that the United States may take a different view of how they operate within Syria. Russia has tried to fill a vacuum that, frankly, we've partially created ourselves by not being major players in the Middle East for a while. Yes, we've got our people in there and that sort of thing, but whether we took a leadership role is another thing that's being debated.
What's your feeling about the speed at which President Trump acted, and also the fact that he took a very limited approach? He could have had more military action.
I think the speed probably caught the world off guard. That is the people who probably will receive this message the way that it was intended to be sent. That would be North Korea, the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, and others who eventually every new president gets tested militarily. He reacted in 76 days by saying, I'm going to take military action when I believe it benefits the United States strategically and even tactically.
And then what is the potential fallout now?
Well, we have to wait and see. The Russians can churn up the rhetoric machine and talk about the United States and how we reacted to this. But we're also seeing a couple other things, one of which is finding whether the Russians were complicit in this. It defies imagination to believe that the Syrians loaded these weapons on, went off, when Russians are on that air base, and to suggest they didn't know it, I think that's stretching what we know about the cooperation between those two countries.
A lot of questions still to find out.
Absolutely.
All right, Brian, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, Twitter effectively won a legal face-off with the